Do you worry about Republic coming and shouting things
Everyone has a right to think what they want.
And this time, it's not just another rumor. Reports are now claiming that Camilla's son has been quietly pushed out of royal circles after Princess Anne allegedly made a deeply unsettling revelation behind closed doors. So what really came out in those private conversations, and why did it spark such a strong reaction inside the monarchy? There's tension surrounding the situation, and it's raising serious questions about influence, loyalty, and who actually holds power behind palace walls. Is this move about protecting the institution, or is it exposing cracks that have been there for longer than anyone wants to admit? Lately, something subtle but serious has been unfolding. A quiet shift has taken place, and people are starting to notice. Camilla's son, who once moved freely through royal-adjacent spaces, is now barely seen. Not invited, not mentioned, simply absent. And the speed of that disappearance is what's drawing attention. Before all this, his presence in royal-linked environments wasn't questioned. He appeared to be part of the extended circle. Now even casual appearances have stopped. It feels as though access has been cut off suddenly, without explanation or warning. The silence from palace officials has only added to the growing speculation. There have been no confirmations or denials, only a noticeable absence of clarity. That silence is encouraging outside voices to form their own conclusions. At the center of many of these discussions is Princess Anne. Her reported concerns are being linked to the situation, even though nothing official has been stated. Anne's reputation plays a major role in how this is being interpreted. She is widely known for discipline, loyalty to tradition, and a strong sense of duty. Because of that, some believe her involvement signals a protective step for the monarchy. Others believe it points to something more serious taking place behind the scenes. Without confirmed details, the situation remains open to interpretation. Different perspectives continue to emerge, each suggesting a different cause for what may have triggered this shift. While the full truth is unclear, one thing stands out. The internal atmosphere appears to have changed. Attention is now turning to how far this decision extends. Is this about one individual being distanced, or does it signal a broader shift in how access and influence are controlled within royal circles? Situations like this often suggest deeper considerations happening out of public view. At the moment, uncertainty defines the situation. There is a growing sense that something significant has shifted within the royal structure, even if no formal explanation has been given. The key question now is whether this is a temporary adjustment or the beginning of a longer-term realignment within the royal inner circle. Historically, quiet exclusions like this tend to reflect deeper concerns related to trust, influence, and long-term stability. Although no direct accusations have been made publicly, the pattern is difficult to ignore. Increasing distance, reduced visibility, and limited access continue to raise questions. Observers are now watching closely to see if similar changes affect others connected to Camilla. The uncertainty surrounding Princess Anne's role adds another layer of complexity. Her name continues to surface, but without official clarification, it becomes difficult to separate fact from assumption. This lack of clarity is allowing speculation to continue growing. The situation highlights how decisions within the monarchy are often handled privately. Actions are taken quietly, and explanations are rarely offered immediately. As a result, the public is left to interpret developments based on limited visible changes. If Camilla's son has truly been pushed out in this way, it suggests that something significant triggered the response. The repeated connection to Princess Anne raises further questions about whether this was a routine matter or something more serious. This brings attention to what some are describing as Anne's silent intervention, a moment that may have shifted the direction of events internally. Reports suggest that Anne stepped forward in a quiet but firm manner, setting off a chain reaction within royal circles without any public announcement. Her involvement appears to have increased scrutiny around an already sensitive situation involving Camilla's son. This aligns with Anne's established approach. She is known for prioritizing duty and maintaining institutional stability. Because of this, her actions are being viewed as deliberate and calculated rather than emotional or reactive. The turning point is believed to involve a private disclosure made by Anne. This disclosure has been described not as an accusation, but as a warning. According to reports, it raised concerns about trust and access within the royal environment. Although the details of this revelation have not been made public, the response to it has been noticeable. Reports indicate that senior figures within the palace began reassessing the situation more seriously after this point. Internal discussions reportedly shifted from routine matters to broader concerns involving loyalty, influence, and institutional security. This change in tone suggests that the issue was taken seriously at the highest levels. Since then, interpretations of Anne's role have remained divided. Some view her actions as necessary to protect the monarchy from potential instability. Others believe it may signal a wider restructuring of influence within royal operations. The lack of official clarification continues to deepen uncertainty. Without clear information, speculation has expanded, with different theories emerging about the true scale of the issue. From a broader perspective, this situation may represent a turning point. It shows how internal warnings can lead to structural adjustments affecting access and relationships within the institution. Even without public confirmation, the sequence of events suggests that boundaries within the royal circle may be tightening. Associations appear to be under closer review, and access is being managed more carefully. Observers continue to monitor developments, aware that what began as a quiet warning could lead to longer-term changes. Questions remain about whether further decisions will follow and how they might reshape relationships within the monarchy. With Princess Anne's reported intervention continuing to influence internal dynamics, attention remains focused on what happens next. What lies behind this growing divide remains unclear. Whether this was a protective step or part of a broader strategic shift is still open to interpretation. And as the situation develops, the possibility remains that more details could emerge, offering greater clarity on what is currently hidden from public view. After the earlier exclusion of Camilla's son from royal-linked spaces, attention inside royal circles didn't just fade away. It shifted into something quieter, but way more complex. This wasn't about loud scandals or messy public behavior. It was deeper than that. The focus started moving toward influence, access, and who's really allowed near the core of royal decision-making. This shift reportedly connects back to concerns linked to Princess Anne. Her reputation for strict discipline and loyalty to royal structure made her response come across as calculated, not emotional. From what's being interpreted internally, the issue wasn't just about one person's behavior. It was about how much access certain individuals had to sensitive areas of royal operations. Behind closed doors, discussions started getting more serious. Senior figures weren't just looking at reputation anymore. They were looking at control. That's when things started to feel different. The conversation moved into territory where even small changes in proximity or access were being treated as potential risks to authority inside the institution. No official confirmation came out, but that didn't stop alternative interpretations from spreading. Some believe this situation isn't really about individuals at all. It's about keeping internal boundaries tight and clearly defined. That uncertainty made everything even more confusing, because nobody could fully separate what was actually happening from what people were assuming. Within this shifting environment, the earlier distancing of Camilla's son started to look less like a one-off move and more like part of a bigger reset. When you line everything up, it points towards something larger than simple reputation management. This looks like a recalibration of power, access, and influence within the royal structure itself. Everything is still unfolding quietly, but the atmosphere feels heavier now. There's this contrast between official silence and growing awareness inside royal circles that something is changing. People paying close attention are noticing patterns, even without public statements confirming anything. Some are now speculating that this moment could go beyond a temporary adjustment. It might reflect a longer-term shift in how closeness to the royal family is handled. And at the center of all this remains Princess Anne's reported role, which continues to be interpreted in completely different ways depending on who you ask. The story is still developing, and the meaning behind it hasn't fully settled. Observers are watching closely, trying to figure out how far this internal shift might go and what it really says about the balance of power inside the monarchy. There's still no clear conclusion, just a growing sense that something important is happening beneath the surface. So what actually triggered the next shift inside the royal inner circle? Why does the silence now feel more intentional than before? Was Princess Anne acting on her own, or was she reflecting concerns shared by others at the top? Nobody is stepping forward to say it directly, and as boundaries tighten, it raises the question of who might be affected next in ways nobody expected. Now things move into what insiders are describing as fault lines inside the palace. Inside the quiet corridors of the royal household, that earlier tension didn't just disappear. It started blending into something wider. What once seemed like isolated concerns began forming a pattern. The deeper you look, the more it starts to feel like long-standing divisions are becoming harder to hide. There has always been a split inside the royal structure, but now it's becoming more visible. On one side, you've got traditionalists, those who stick firmly to hierarchy, duty, and strict roles. On the other side, there are modernizers who want the monarchy to evolve and adjust to changing public expectations. Right in the middle of that divide stands Princess Anne. Her approach is known to be firm, disciplined, and consistent. She represents structure and continuity, especially when things feel uncertain. But that same approach can create friction with those who think the institution needs to loosen up and adapt. At the same time, there's the ongoing sensitivity around Camilla and her position within the wider royal framework. While her place is established, it still comes with careful consideration, especially when questions about influence and access start coming up again. That adds another layer to internal discussions, where perception and tradition are constantly being weighed against each other. With that background, concerns about outside influence started gaining more weight. The monarchy has always been cautious about who gets close and how much influence they carry. So even subtle changes in proximity began to get extra attention, with some viewing them as possible risks to long-term stability. As these concerns quietly spread through internal conversations, uncertainty grew. People started questioning whether what happened with Camilla's son was just one situation or part of a wider strategy to tighten control over access and influence. Different interpretations continued to clash without any clear resolution. That's what kept the speculation alive. The situation showed that internal disagreements weren't staying hidden anymore. They were starting to shape how stable the monarchy actually looked from the outside. It also revealed how decisions about access, trust, and proximity were becoming central to how the royal institution defines itself internally. Even without public explanations, these choices were sending signals. No official statement explained the reasoning behind recent distancing or warnings, but the pattern was still visible. Careful separation, reduced interaction, and quiet adjustments started to form a clear picture for those paying attention. This growing uncertainty reinforced one idea: it's not just about individuals anymore. It's about the balance of influence that controls relationships inside the royal structure. That's why attention hasn't moved away. People are watching to see how these subtle shifts continue to reshape things from the inside. The bigger implications are still unclear, and the direction this is heading in hasn't fully revealed itself. If these fault lines are only the beginning, then something bigger may already be in motion behind closed doors. The real question is who's shaping the next move, and why silence is being used instead of explanation. As boundaries continue tightening inside the palace, it raises another question: what truth is still being kept just out of reach? Now attention turns to what some are calling whispers beneath the crown. Following the earlier tensions connected to Camilla's son and the concerns linked to Princess Anne, a new pattern started appearing in public: quiet, subtle, but noticeable. There were no official announcements, no direct statements, but something was changing in how senior royals were presenting themselves. The royal family has always handled disagreements privately, choosing distance over confrontation. Instead of public conflict, they rely on controlled appearances and carefully managed unity. But when you watch closely, those small changes start to speak louder than words. Things like seating arrangements, attendance at events, and who stands next to who suddenly began to matter more. These details, usually overlooked, started getting attention because of the context surrounding them. Over time, these adjustments became harder to ignore. Certain individuals appeared less frequently alongside others connected to the situation. Joint appearances felt more formal, more distant, and less natural. There wasn't any visible conflict, but there was a clear sense of separation. It showed up through scheduling choices and protocol shifts rather than direct action. That kind of quiet distancing doesn't need explanation. It speaks for itself. Observers and commentators began linking these patterns back to Princess Anne's reported stance. Even without confirmation, each small change, every altered interaction, every reduced appearance, was being read as a signal of alignment. And that's where things stand now. Not with clear answers, but with patterns, shifts, and silence that feels more deliberate than ever. All of this only reinforced one growing perception: Princess Anne's concerns were being taken seriously across multiple levels of the institution. The way things started shifting, quietly but consistently, made it hard to ignore. At the same time, not everyone agreed on what it meant. Some voices suggested these changes could simply be routine planning, not some coordinated move happening behind the scenes. Still, even with that doubt, the pattern didn't break. The same subtle adjustments kept showing up again and again, shaping how people on the outside interpreted everything. That consistency is what made the situation feel less random and more intentional. There was no open disagreement, no visible clash, just a steady pattern of controlled separation. That alone started building a narrative. That internal unity was forming around a cautious position. Not loudly, not officially, but quietly. And the more these restrained appearances continued, the stronger that perception became. What stood out most was how influence inside the royal structure wasn't being shown through speeches or direct statements. It was happening through small moves, adjustments in presence, interaction, and visibility. These quiet changes were doing all the talking, signaling alignment whether it came from agreement or simple caution. As behavior continued to evolve, it became clear that the earlier concerns weren't being treated as isolated anymore. They were part of something bigger, an internal awareness shaping how people interacted behind palace walls. And even without clear answers, the meaning of it all kept unfolding slowly. Silence itself started to feel meaningful. The lack of official explanation only pushed observers to read deeper into every small detail. Every absence, every reduced appearance, every shift in behavior carried more weight. People weren't just watching anymore, they were analyzing. This steady repetition of careful, controlled behavior made it seem like a shared caution was guiding decisions across different layers of the institution. Not something announced, but something understood internally. Over time, this quiet alignment became harder to dismiss. It started to look like internal unity forming without ever being directly acknowledged. And that's where things start to feel more complex, because silence can either mean stability, or it can hide deeper division. So what's really happening beneath that silence? Are more changes already being prepared out of sight? And if these lines are tightening, who ends up on the outside next? This is where things shift into what can only be described as controlled palace fallout. After the tensions surrounding Camilla's son and the concerns linked to Princess Anne, the royal household moved into a new phase. Not loud, not reactive, but controlled. Every move started to feel calculated, shaped by caution rather than reaction. Instead of public statements or open confrontation, the focus turned to managing perception behind the scenes. Every decision appeared to be filtered through one goal: keep things stable on the surface, no matter what's happening underneath. At the same time, the reduced visibility of certain individuals became more noticeable. On the outside, it could be explained away as scheduling changes or coincidence, but when those gaps kept appearing, people started questioning whether they were really accidental. Appearances were adjusted just enough to create distance, but not enough to raise direct alarms. It was a careful balance, maintaining the image of normal royal activity while quietly shifting who was seen and who wasn't. Behind all of this, communication inside the palace seemed tightly controlled. Messages stayed minimal, statements were limited, and anything that reached the public avoided directly addressing tension. The strategy was clear: say less, reveal less, and keep control of the narrative. Even internally, decisions affecting access and visibility were framed as routine. Nothing was labeled as exclusion. Everything was presented as a normal adjustment. That framing helped reduce outside scrutiny, while still enforcing boundaries behind closed doors. The situation involving Camilla's son remained unresolved publicly, but the silence around it carried weight. What wasn't being said started to matter just as much as what could be seen. It created the sense that decisions were being made with long-term strategy in mind, not short-term explanation. Observers had mixed interpretations. Some believed this was a coordinated effort to contain potential fallout. Others saw it as standard royal discipline, handled quietly, like it always has been. But without official clarity, speculation kept growing. In this kind of environment, even neutral actions started looking intentional. Simple decisions, like who attends an event or who stands where, were being analyzed for hidden meaning. Despite all the different views, one thing stayed consistent. The situation was being handled through silence and control, not openness. That pattern revealed something bigger about how the monarchy operates. Internal concerns aren't always addressed publicly. Instead, they're managed through quiet adjustments, controlled messaging, and careful distancing. And instead of reducing attention, that silence actually made people more curious. It pushed observers to look closer, to question more, and to search for meaning in every small shift. Within this bigger picture, everything connected to Camilla's son and Princess Anne remained part of an ongoing story. There was no clear ending, just a continued sense that stability was being prioritized above all else. But that leads to another question. What is really being protected here? Is this just discipline playing out quietly, or something deeper involving power and control? Who benefits from these quiet removals? And what information is still being kept out of view as the palace continues tightening control? Now the focus shifts again, this time to what some are calling redrawn royal lines. After the earlier tensions, it became clear that decisions weren't being treated as isolated anymore. They were part of a larger shift in how influence was defined and managed inside the royal structure. This transition didn't come with announcements or visible conflict. It happened through steady, controlled adjustments that slowly reshaped the inner circle. Who was considered close and who wasn't started becoming more defined. Within this environment, boundaries became stricter, quietly reinforced. The goal seemed to be protecting the structure of the monarchy from any uncertainty or blurred lines of access. Camilla still held her position publicly, but the atmosphere around her connections to certain internal spaces appeared more restricted. Nothing openly changed, but the tone shifted. This wasn't presented as punishment. It looked more like recalibration, adjusting access to maintain stability. Observers recognized this pattern. When changes happen this quietly, especially after concerns raised at senior levels, it usually signals deeper caution within the institution. Over time, the situation involving Camilla's son started being viewed differently, not as a single event, but as part of a broader effort to redefine boundaries around influence. Interpretations continued to vary. Some believed these were precautionary steps meant to prevent future issues. Others saw it as a deliberate restructuring of who gets access and how much influence they hold. Without official clarification, speculation only grew stronger. Routine adjustments started being read as signals, each one analyzed for meaning. What became clearer, though, was the monarchy's priority. Long-term control over access and influence seemed to matter more than immediate transparency. Even without confirmation, the pattern told its own story. Distancing, careful appearances, controlled communication. It all pointed toward decisions being made with stability in mind. At this point, the situation had moved beyond a single controversy. It started to reflect something bigger, a strategic realignment inside the royal structure. Trust, access, and influence were being quietly redefined. Relationships were shifting without public explanation. The real question now isn't whether change has happened. That part is already clear. The question is how far it goes. Because as the royal family continues adjusting internally, the silence surrounding these moves isn't reducing attention, it's increasing it. Every quiet shift is being watched, every pattern studied, and with no clear resolution yet, the uncertainty leaves room for more changes to emerge. If this is still unfolding, then what's already in motion behind closed doors might only be the beginning. For now, the silence remains, but it doesn't feel empty. It feels deliberate. And as more subtle changes begin to appear, one thing is certain. This story isn't finished, and the next move may reveal more than anything said out loud.